Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's press conference of the Institute of National Remembrance, which will launch a new project. It will be an educational campaign about great Poles who had impact on the development of the civilization. We have with us Dr. Jarosław Szarek, the president of IPN, Professor Orłowski, the author of the biographical dictionary on the Polish input into sciences, and Ms. Czerniakowska, a director of documentaries. Now I will give the floor to the president of the Institute of National Remembrance, Dr. Jarosław Szarek. Ladies and gentlemen, the mission of the Institute of National Remembrance is to bring back the memory of those parts of our history which are missing, those parts of our history which were removed by totalitarian systems. For over half a century we were not an independent state. For years the Institute of National Remembrance has been delivering, and in our memory we have those who have struggled for freedom and independence. The input of the Polish people in the struggle for freedom in the 19th and 20th centuries is obvious, and it is clearly engraved in our memory. Also, the spiritual heritage which we've contributed to the world civilization, like the Saint Faustyna Kowalska or Saint John Paul II. Those heroes, alongside our freedom heroes, are present in the world history. However, there is one element of Polish contribution to civilization development which is not only unknown in the world, but also is unknown in Poland. And this is a gap which we would like to fill. A few years ago, the Institute of National Remembrance published Professor Bolesław Orłowski's work, the biographical dictionary of 1,300 biographies of Polish inventors and scientists, people who've made major influence on the development of civilization. The main figures who are often unknown in Poland, which made great impact on the world science, is Mościcki, Jan Czochralski. He came back only recently. His input in the work on monocrystals and semiconductors, which are present in all electronics, this is his achievement. Or Tadeusz Sędzimir, who since 1990 has been the patron of the biggest steelworks in Poland, replacing Lenin in this capacity. The man who made revolutionary changes in steel production. However, he is unknown. When the world turned its eyes onto solidarity and its freedom struggle, when it was looking at the John Paul II at the end of 1970s, there were few people that 90% of production of sheet metal, which is present in any household, in every car, is created thanks to the technologies developed by Tadeusz Sędzimy. We want to bring back the memory of about these people. One more contribution. Our heroes from the World War II era, our heroes, we sing the songs about it, we know them very well, but those who contributed to the victory but didn't do so in direct fight, they were engineers. Their contribution is completely unknown. Very slowly, we've been talking about the work of Polish mathematicians who solved the mystery of Enigma. But we have many more achievements like this. Engineers Magnuski, Kosecki, one of them invented the most popular radio, the walkie-talkie, used by the American army. This was an invention of a Polish engineer, or the mine detector. Their inventions were saving lives of thousands of soldiers and helped the Allies to win against the Nazis. After 1945, about 5,000 Polish engineers were in the United Kingdom. They worked in the Allied armaments industry. This is completely forgotten contribution of Poland into the victory of World War II. Or the Polish participation in the American Apollo program. In this program, there were two teams applying for a contract for the moon vehicle. Both teams included Polish people, those who were raised in the independent Poland. Professor Bolesław Orłowski was also raised in the independent Poland before World War II. There's one more thing we would like to show. We would like to bring back the ethos of these people, the ethos of service to the independent country, of ethos of work for your country, for science. People who had character, people of courage. We want to focus on the ethos as well. This is why we organized this program. We've prepared a year-long cycle. We've started working on the dictionary. We want to publish this dictionary in the internet. We wanted to have it translated into English. We will organize an educational campaign, but even this calendar featuring 12 persons, and there is a film, a documentary by Ms. Alina Czerniakowska. Those films were created and will be promoted by Institute of National Remembrance. We want to bring back the civilizational heritage, and I think we'll be able to achieve it together. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Professor Bolesław Orłowski, the author of the previously mentioned Dictionary of Polish Inventors and Scientists.
Dzień dobry Państwu.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The President has described what the intention behind the dictionary was. Indeed, over the last 3 centuries,
świadome kręgi naszego narodu były głównie ukierunkowane na walkę o niepodległość,
the
o
elites
zachowanie
of Polish
tożsamości
society
narodowej
were focusing on the
i,
freedom struggle, on maintaining
i
our national
na tą
identity,
walkę i zbrojną, i na
and
walkę piórem, na wspieranie tej walki piórem.
those people were fighting with guns in their hands and also with pens in their hands. This is why our biographical dictionaries are full of generals, insurgents and also writers.
Cały szereg ludzi,
The whole
którzy
range of
zajmowali się
people
krzewieniem
who were dealing
nauk
with
przyrodniczych i krzewieniem techniki,
promoting sciences and
Często
promoting technology,
za granicami, ze
very
względu
often
na to, że
outside of
nie
Poland,
mieliśmy w Polsce
because
możliwości
in Poland
robienia
we didn't
XIX
have
wieku u siebie, a ten
an
wiek
opportunity in the
XIX
19th century to do it in Poland. And it was the 19th century that built the foundations of the economic affluence of the country. And because
w takim
science and
nie były
technology
obiektem szczególnego
was not
zainteresowania
of particular
większości
interest
polskiej
to
inteligencji,
the majority
powiedzmy tak,
of
to
the
szczerze,
Polish
to oni są rzeczywiście
intelligentsia
mało
or
znani.
the elite.
Nie tylko
Those
mało
people
znani
are
za
little
granicą,
known.
ale mało
They are
znani u
little
nas
known
jeszcze
not
bardziej nawet
only
mało znani.
abroad but also
Pracując nad
in
tym
Poland.
słownikiem, sam
As I was working on
uczyłem
this
się bardzo
dictionary,
wielu rzeczy.
I was
Mnogo
learning a
zajmuję
lot
się od
myself, even though
przeszło pół
I've been
wieku
dealing with
badaniem,
for over half a century
polskiej historii i nauki.
with studying
Także tu
the
mamy
history of
ogromne,
Polish science. So
ogromną pracę do wykonania.
there's a huge work to be done to bring back the memory of these people.
Nasz ogląd
And
dorobku naszej przeszłości
our objective is merely to make sure that our perception of our culture is not biased. We don't want to say that inventors were better than insurgents. By no means. Of course, fighting for our freedom was the most important thing to do. But our input, our contribution to sciences and technology is so important that it's worthwhile to remember about it. This is why we have this dictionary. It is linked with many aspects because during the communist era, the Second Republic, the independent Poland before World War II, was not treated well by the then history, official history. For this reason, they were trying not to remember about certain things which were characteristic of the scientists and engineers of that era. Our scientists and engineers were in the forefront of science and technology, world science and technology. It was because many Poles spread across the world for political reasons. They would study in other countries and they would work in the most developed countries, and that's where they had their careers. When Poland regained its independence in 1918, many of them came back to their country, their homeland. This is why in Poland we had a whole range of people who would abandon their careers, their money in other countries. For example, Narutowicz, as he was coming back to the country to become a minister, he would get a salary that he would pay to his housemates back in Zurich. Politicians were not that money hungry back then, so they were coming back to support the country, even though it was against their personal interests.
Także i w związku z tym cała grupa była ludzi już znanych w Europie.
There was an entire group of people who were famous across Europe.
W Polsce
and
No, na przykład Mościcki
unknown
był
in
jednym z
Poland. For
głównych
example, Ignacy
wynalazców
Mościcki
europejskich
was one of the main
początku
inventors
XX wieku.
in Europe
Jego
at the beginning
metoda,
of the 20th century. His
produkcji kwasu azotowego na masową skalę, przemysłowa metoda,
nitric
była
acid
strasznie ważna w tym
industrial
czasie,
production
bo
method
świat się
was
stoczył
very
do
important
wielkiej
because
wojny,
the
a
world was getting ready for the Great
kwas
War,
azotowy to jest
and the
również produkcja
nitric acid
amunicji.
is important
No, a
in
poza
the
tym
manufacture
ze
of
względów rolniczych
munitions,
też to są bardzo
and it's also
ważne
important
związki,
for
które
agricultural
wzmacniają
in agricultural production.
przydatność gleby.
And
Więc z tego powodu on był
nitrates
bardzo znany.
are used as fertilizers.
Narutowicz
This
był
made
już,
Mościcki famous.
najważniejszym
Narutowicz
wówczas
was
europejskim
the most
twórcą
important
nowych
in
wówczas
Europe
elektrowni wodnych.
creator
Więc to
of
było też bardzo
hydro
ważna
power
rzecz.
plants.
I proszę pamiętać, że w pewnym momencie
Please remember, bear in
Narutowicza,
mind
który
that Narutowicz,
w zmieniających się ciągle rządach zawsze był jako minister
who was
dóbr
always
publicznych,
the Ministry of
skłoniono,
Public Works,
żeby został
was
na pewien czas ministrem
made
spraw
to become the
zagranicznych.
Minister
Dlaczego?
of
Bo na
Foreign
konferencji
Affairs.
w Genui
Why? Because in the Geneva Conference of 1922,
cała Europa
the entire
znała
Europe
Narutowicza jako
knew
ważnego
Narutowicz
przedsiębiorcę,
as an
a co do
important
tego
businessman,
państwa, które powstało gdzieś tam na
and they
rubieżach
were not that
cywilizacji,
familiar with this
to
new
nie wiedzieli,
country
czy to nie
that
jest
was
państwo
created
Także można
at
powiedzieć,
the outskirts
że
of civilization.
Narutowicz robił
They thought it
protekcję
maybe it's
państwu
an
polskiemu, no,
seasonal
powstałemu,
country. So
no, żeby
Narutowicz was
nabrano do niego zaufania. Tak to
creating
wyglądało.
trust in Poland, which was a newly
No i
created
cała
state,
była
in fact.
plejada ludzi, którzy
And there was a whole
zaczęli
range of
karierę
people who started their
właśnie w
careers
Rzeczypospolitej.
in
Bo
the Second
generalnie biorąc,
Republic.
Mimo że podstawy ekonomiczne nie były mocne,
Because even though the Second Republic didn't have a strong economic background, because the 19th century was not working for us, for our country,
przedstawiciele naszej kadry technicznej
in spite of that, our scientists and engineers
próbowali
were
rywalizować z
trying
najlepszymi.
to rival with the best, to
I
struggle
często
with the
im się
best.
to udawało,
And
bo
very
przecież
often
Bryła
they
zrobił
made it.
pierwszy na świecie
Bryła, for
most
example,
spawany, prawda?
created the first welded bridge in the world.
No, Sędzimir stworzył właśnie
Sędzimir
tą metodę, której
created the method
pan prezes, która polegała
of
na
sheet metal
walcowaniu
making
blachy
that
w
the president
pasmach
mentioned.
ogromnej długości.
It was
bardzo
about
cienkich,
creating very long and very thin
cieńszych niż wcześniej.
sheets of metal, thinner than
Cynkowanie
before,
tego
and
metodą
then it
specjalną,
was
która,
galvanized using a special
zapewniała
method
trwałość powłoki,
that
bo
ensured a
izolowała,
durable surface,
proces
durable
cynkowania
coating,
od,
because the galvanization
powietrza
process
atmosferycznego, więc się nie wytleniał.
isolated the metal from air, which meant that
Było to wszystko znacznie
the
bardziej
metal,
trwałe.
the sheet metal was
Także
corrosion
to wszystko
resistant.
jest
All
sprawą,
of that
że ta druga Rzeczpospolita była
meant that the Second Republic
pod tym
was
względem miała osiągnięcia większe niż kiedykolwiek w
had
historii
huge
Polski.
achievements, the biggest achievements in the history of
Przykładem
Poland.
bardzo ciekawym, pokazującym
An
to,
interesting
jak
example
była
would
kwestia,
be
podjęcia przez Polskę wypuszczenia balonu
Poland
stratosferycznego
launching a stratospheric balloon called the Star of Poland.
Wiedzą, bo był taki bloczek
The
z
philatelists
balonem
know
zrobiony.
all about it because there was this postal stamp
Robiono
with
to ze
this
składek
balloon,
publicznych.
and it was done with public contributions.
Technicznie było to rozwiązane
And
wspaniale.
technically, the solution was great. Because, for example, the nacelle for the crew was much safer than the previous nacelles, because you must remember that a few years before,
Sowiecki balon
Soviet Oso Aviachin
uległ katastrofie i zginęła cała załoga. Dlaczego?
was
Bo nie mogła się
crashed,
wydostać z gondoli, bo
and the
było
whole
na tyle
crew
śrub
died because they couldn't get out of the nacelle because there were so many screws in the hatch that they were able only to unscrew only 7 out of 24 of those screws. In the Polish nacelle ensured much better abilities for the crew to get out. Mieczysław Wolfke, an eminent scientist, the creator of the basis of holography and the inventor of the discoverer of the first quantum liquid. He was the head of this whole team. They created the balloon using the artificial silk from Milanówek, and they covered it with rubber.
They didn't have enough budget for helium, but given the fact that there were some irregularities during the launch of this high-altitude balloon because of high wind, the cover or the coating was destroyed, and then they were planning to repeat this whole exercise in September 39, because the first initial attempt was in 38. But of course, whatever was supposed to happen in 39 didn't happen, because the German army and then closely followed by the Soviet army were already in Poland. But just in a nutshell, I'm illustrating how strong Poland was scientifically and what its weaknesses were purely financial weaknesses sometimes. And well, this was a brief overview. I'm ready to take any question, but let's remember that the dictionary has 1,300 entries. But still, let me add one more contribution, namely something that the British or the English are not bragging about, because they don't like to praise anyone from outside their own country, especially an ally that they abandoned themselves. And at a certain point in the communist era, certain people couldn't be talked about, couldn't be mentioned, because they were high achievers abroad. But, for example, they made launchers for flying fortresses in America. This was done by Rudnicki. They were making transmitters and radio stations that were used by commanders of the Normandy operation. They had 8 channels to communicate with soldiers on the beach. Mr. Jelonek, who was the head of the British scientific team, they were responsible for that first radio connection or the radio line. There was another gentleman, Wacław Struszyński, who invented the antenna that could be used to locate German U-boats that were coming to the surface trying to contact their base using certain frequencies. And this idea, he had this idea before the war, and he wanted to get a patent in 38. Then he went to Great Britain, and the general governorship gave him the patent in 39, and it has its number and so on. So when you look into my dictionary, you will see. So they didn't even know that they were giving a patent for a device that was created to fight against German U-boats. So actually that was something quite interesting. Also, there was Mr. Kosacki and his mine detection devices used in the Battle of Alamein in 42. And let's remember that back in the 90s, a TV personality in the States made a Polish joke, and he said that the mine detector from Poland was like tapping your foot on the floor. They didn't know their history, so no one could respond to him well, and people were offended, and the Polish Congress in the States were offended, and so on and so on. But maybe someone should have told this TV personality about Kosacki, who had invented a detector that was 8 times better than other detectors. Probably it would have taught him a lesson. Thank you, Professor, for this. This was an exciting lesson in the history of Polish science. This is a project by the Institute of National Remembrance, together with the Polish Academy of Sciences and its Institute for History of Science. The dictionary authored by our author is all about the greatest inventors, and it's peppered with a lot of nice fun facts, a lot of very curious entries concerning Polish inventions and great achievements of the Polish science. We will keep informing you about our projects in Poland, in international media. We will also launch videos on our IPN TV channel. We will make documentaries. Alina Czerniakowska is our director. Alina, please take the floor. If I could say something, if I may, there is something very, very important that people don't know, at least on Polish TV. Quite often, even if there are TV shows on the subject, people don't know, but there is a huge difference between a discovery and an invention. People who are dealing with arts, they interchange, they use invention and discovery interchangeably, but actually a discovery is something that exists somewhere in nature and you need to just see it, but it was there. However, an invention, it's a man-made concept. So, for example, a button is an invention from the Middle Ages, because before that people were not using buttons on their outfits. So that's a key difference between a discovery and an invention. If you use these terms interchangeably, you're making a mistake, actually. So we do need to remember about this and change our habits when we talk about inventions or discoveries, knowing what we're talking about. Good afternoon, Professor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome everyone who is interested in the subject, because this subject wouldn't have been picked up if not for Professor Orłowski, at least from my point of view, because, well, back in 2016, when I was looking for materials and topics for possible videos, I came across Professor Orłowski giving a lecture at a museum. I don't know how to call it. It was a museum of matches. It was a factory making matches and a museum. It looked like just a regular museum, and I was listening to the professor, and his lecture was so exciting, so compelling, sharing with us so much knowledge, and I thought, yes, this professor is someone that I have to stick to. I have to look for him, I have to find him, and I have to start working with him. So I found him, and it had turned out that he had already a 4-volume dictionary. So I started reading this dictionary, and I started to looking at the phenomenon of polls and the notion of Polishness. I think that was a nice concept. I read more publications by the professor. My son also read a book called Following in the Footsteps of the Pharaohs. Professor, this was amazing. It read like a detective story, like a crime story, but it was a scientific book, so amazing. So we started making a film about a man who devoted his life to looking for inventors, scientists who were Polish or who were somehow connected, tied to Poland. The professor deserves to have at least one film made about him. So I would like to thank the Institute of National Remembrance, the president, Professor Szarek, and I would like to thank everyone who has helped me, and Dorota Kalita also, who has supported me a lot. If not for her, we wouldn't have had this video about Janusz Kurtyka. So this project wouldn't be possible without her. Madam Ania Bocian, thank you so much. You've been helping me and supporting me all along. It seems to me that we need to show our gratitude to everyone who's willing to talk about such topics, such subjects, because today we're so immersed, inundated with political news. It's so sensational. It always seems exciting, but actually looking for scientists trying to revive the memory of scientists from the past. Some journalists, they don't want to do this because it's not sensational enough. But now I think there's more and more topics like this. When I came here, these projects were not so common, but now I can see more are being developed, especially that such people, such personalities, they really make us proud. Thank you, Professor, for your interest in great Polish scientists and inventors. I'm very happy that you're also creating some shorter formats, because it's going to be very interesting for schools and for students. Definitely. I believe that the president of the Polish Institute of Remembrance, you like this idea that maybe this dictionary could be turned into something that is a little bit simpler, something that could be made popular maybe in schools, that could be sent to embassies. Like, for example, we could have a separate issue dedicated to Switzerland, because we had so many Polish people who went to Switzerland and contributed to science there. Turkey, we had a number of Polish people in Turkey who were very, very active in the world of technology and science back then. So definitely there is something to talk about. We can find topics for we can find topics that could be really authentic, illustrating how different countries collaborated in the past in the world of science. Something that really happened, and we, the Polish people, contributed. Yeah, we used to have amazing inventors, talented people, brilliant people that we can really be proud of. When I was doing my internship with the BBC in 92, 93, towards the end of my internship, I made a short video about the Enigma machine, and one of my bosses said, "Enigma, it's all English. What are you trying to do?" And I said, "Listen, because in Hyde Park, very close to Hyde Park, there is this museum, the Sikorski Museum. Go and learn about the Enigma." And we started talking, and a certain discussion ensued. Scientists, people from universities, they had no idea about the Polish contribution to Enigma. And actually, it was already in 1934, yeah, I would say 1932, 1933, yeah. 3 Polish cryptographers managed to break the Enigma cipher. But it's all very complex. What they did was actually they set a direction, and the British and the French intelligence were informed about that about that invention or about that achievement. But in the beginning of the war, Germans made their technology even more complex, even more complicated. And then it was not so easy to control it again. But at least our scientists sort of set a direction for further developments in breaking the Enigma. A lot of people are saying it's all 100% Polish. It's not 100% Polish, but our Polish scientists were there in the very beginning. Sure, Rejewski also was very much involved. Yes, but the French didn't allow for the British to hire Polish scientists. Yes, the French, they didn't want to admit that Poland had so much contribution. Right, yeah, and it's still ongoing, this sort of competition or rivalry. It's good that the National Institute of Remembrance is picking up this subject. Today, when we talk so much about economic growth and innovation, I think it's an important subject, very relevant. We need to talk about Poland, not only in the context of military achievements, but also in the context of inventing things that changed the world. I think it's as important today as our patriotism. Back then, with the BBC, I was making this brief video, and I led in with soldiers in Hyde Park during the military parade, and I quoted Churchill, who said that that so many people, it was a small group of people, so few that so many owed to, and they didn't have their place in the parade. And there was a Polish soldier crying, and an English woman asked him, "Why are you crying?" But he didn't say anything. They were the defenders, the few to whom everyone owed so much. There wasn't a place for them. And I remember it was just at the end of the year, so my boss didn't see this video because I was just leaving, so he started watching it. In the last moment, he started lighting his cigarette, but he crushed his cigarette. He never started smoking it, and he just watched my video till the very end, and he said, "Who are you going to work for when you're back in Poland?" And I said, "Our national TV." I said national TV. I remember the first time in my life I had used the word national TV. But he said, "You don't get it. I just mean something else. What about financial backup? What about promoting your projects?" But I couldn't answer back then. So I could tell that my film made an impression on him. Those soldiers sitting in Hyde Park watching the parade, but there was no place for them in the parade. And the Enigma code, we should never be afraid to talk about these things loud and clear. Yeah. Especially that these matters sometimes are more relevant than other issues. Our contribution in the world of technology, in the world of science, of other nations, is very well received and received with gratitude, so we should be a part of that. Everyone knows that we're brave, that we've always been brave, even our enemies know that. Polish people, everyone knows that they are very elegant, but not afraid to charge or attack their enemies. Napoleon used to say, "Drunk as a Pole," but actually, he meant, even though Polish people may be drunk, they are amazing officers and soldiers. So I remember that those Polish scientists and inventors, when I was making films about these people, I was trying to show the gist of each invention. It was very difficult to show the technical aspects of their inventions, find the right material, find the right photos, find the pen that Czochralski was using, but actually he didn't use ink, he used lead. And when he used lead, he looked and saw those monocrystals, and he started describing this. So it's so important to make sure that the whole technical aspect and the whole visual aspect of those films is really exciting enough to remember about Wasiutyński, Czochralski, Zajl, and what they invented and what they were responsible for. President Mościcki, when he died in '46, he said, before he died, he said, I don't want any special means to commemorate me. I just want to have my tombstone to be covered in barbed wire, because my beloved country is not free. So we are in captivity. He never wanted money, he never wanted anything. Yeah, I had the pleasure, the honor of talking to his widow in 1977, and she said yes, she confirmed that he wanted to be buried in an unmarked grave. And I was one of the first people who brought her to his grave in Geneva. So since the time of his burial, it was the first time that she visited his grave, and the Swiss authorities made this tombstone with black granite and so on. When I was bringing his body to Poland, I called the newspaper Gazeta Wyborcza, and I said, maybe we should start a discussion. Maybe we shouldn't bring him to Poland if he wanted to be buried in an unmarked grave. Maybe we shouldn't do anything if that was his wish. But they said, we're not interested in the topic. And then it turned out that it was also communicated to Urban, the editor-in-chief of the newspaper Nie, and he published it.
I do think it's an interesting subject for an interesting discussion. To which degree we have a right to privacy as public people. Wasiutyński, he fought in the Warsaw Rising. He was the creator of railway lines. Meanwhile, he is saved from the Warsaw Rising. Okay, the Vienna line was created before, but he studied it. Okay, so thank you once again, and let's have lots of discussion on these subjects. Thank you very much, President, and thank you very much, Director. Thank you very much. Now we have now a question from the Polish radio. You've partly to the Director. How are you structuring your films, and what will we be able to see in your films, in your documentaries? Well, those videos are short. We have 12 videos. The list of subjects was confirmed by the president of the Institute of National Remembrance. There is a different narrator in each of those videos. Each video contains a biographical element, but the most important part is covers the achievements of the person. I think this is the most important part of these documentaries. I was trying to make sure that there is not too much talking. We wanted to give a good coverage of what was going on back then. We wanted to make sure to be time realistic. Mr. Malak was helping me in supervising the part about aviation. He said it's good. And I'm happy that he said so, because this means I didn't make any mistakes. It seems that, you're making movies, you can do just about anything, but documentaries are special in this respect. If you're discussing a given subject, you have to show it. You have to show the exact thing on the screen, because otherwise you are unreliable. So this is the kind of documentaries I was raised on. So you have to be sure that, even the signature that is shown on the screen is authentic, that it's not a copy. That's very important. I think that these short videos will be easy to watch, they won't be boring, and I hope that they will also be educational. It's a pill of knowledge. So those documentaries include biography. I mean, these people usually had very colorful lives, but we only focused on the most important facts from their biographies, but we mainly focused on their achievements. Thank you very much. Thank you, our guests. Thank you for your attention. And now we would like to invite you to watch the first of the videos at IPN TV. This one is about Ignacy Mościcki.